Welcome to Florida Focus, a college football podcast. My name is Brandon. I'm a lifetime Seminole fan.
And this is Chris and Jared, and we are lifetime Gator fans.
We are putting aside those differences as rivals to bring you the fantastic world of college football throughout the Sunshine State. And a few things to get to tonight. We're going to recap the Florida State-Louisville ACC championship game and then talk about Selection Sunday. So, if it's all right, I'll just get started on a few things that happened in the game. Florida State played lights out. That is by far the best defensive performance I have seen by the Noles in at least a decade. They didn't allow more than 230 yards of offense or so. No touchdowns despite giving up a blocked punt where the Cardinals started on their own on the Florida State 12-yard line, scored nothing. The defensive stats were insane. Fisk got in the backfield so many times. Patrick Payton had so many blocked pass breakups. Jared Verse was fantastic. And the Noles held the Cardinals to 6 points. That's something a Jeff Brom team hasn't done in the better part of 5 years. And this is a team that regularly scored in the 30s this season. I was blown away. In a game where the Noles had to have it on defense, they got everything they ever could have wanted for it. Now, the offense was a very different story. Brock Glenn steering the headlights and has a lot of things to figure out. 55 yards of offense passing kind of shows that. And we had to essentially go with direct snap to Toa-Philly most of the second half to get offense on the field. But what a gutsy 16-6 win to finish the undefeated season off. I was blown away.
Yeah, I'll say that, as someone not connected to any of those schools, it was hard to watch. The second half was a little bit more entertaining, and you could see that the Noles and Norvell, they were going to make the adjustments at halftime. You just kind of knew if they could just keep it close the first half, as rough as Glenn was playing and both offenses were playing. They had the advantage on especially the defensive line. And in the second half, I think it was genius by Norvell to have the direct snap to Toa-Philly, have him run the Wildcat, because Glenn just wasn't working for him. But also, you didn't have to panic too much because your defense was playing so well, and so it was just kind of, can you just wait until you figure out the right chess piece to move? And once they did, it was just over. And credit to them, when Louisville got the ball deep after that punt, was it a block? I think it was. Jared and I were texting. I was like, the way things are going, like, Louisville's not going to go more than 2 yards, and they're going to turn it over. And sure enough, they did. What's the linebacker's name? Number 15. He made the play before the interception where he prevented the tight end from catching it, and then he had great coverage to play after that and picked it off.
Tatum Bethune, play of the game.
Bethune. Yeah, back-to-back plays, really.
Yep.
For him, and just a dominating performance on defense for them as they win the ACC championship game.
Yep. And Jared, if you have any thoughts about the actual game itself?
You guys pretty much summed it up. I think that you when you look at that game, and you really take look at Florida State, for instance, right there, and what they had to do. Again, that's a team that did what they had to do when they had to do it. As far as their defense goes, you both mentioned just what a performance that was to watch, and what just a dominating aspect of the game. You rarely in college football do you see, one unit like that control a game for 4 quarters, start to finish from snap to snap, and they really did. We've seen performances, like Von Miller in the bowl game against Oklahoma, where they're literally, he just stopped everything. You've seen those sort of things, but an entire defense, all phases, from the defensive line, the linebackers, the secondary, you just had a lot of people stepping up and make plays. They knew going into that, that they were going to have to carry that team, and they did. And so that was really interesting to watch. And you mentioned it, Brandon. I think when we were text messaging during the game, you were like, if you're a Florida State fan, this is it's a really great, just really great coaching performance here. And you were right. When you look at what you're basically coaching a game with, both your hands tied behind your back. Because one side of the ball, you're going to be lucky to get anything from. I think I was in the group chat when they kicked the field goal to go up 3-0. I was like, well, this game's over.
Yep.
And I was wrong, but I mean, I was kind of right too. That Florida State obviously ends up putting 16 on the board and kind of with that 10-point win in the most of ugly fashions. And I mean, hats off, undefeated season. You got a chance to play another one here. Not the one you want, but I mean, that's a team that I think persevered and while the outcome is not what you would want, that's a team that really did some things that most people don't. So it's really unfortunate they don't get a chance to advance there in the playoff. But man, what a ride this season was for the Florida State fans and listeners. That team just it was a gritty team and a gutsy team, and they every step of the way they rose to the occasion. So hats off to them. Obviously that's not my team, but hats off to that whole program. Hats off to that fan base. That was a fun ride to watch.
Yeah, it was a shame that the defense really didn't get the credit it deserved until the very last 3 games of the year, because that was something that constantly got better throughout the season. Sure, you had some periods of time in the year where maybe Verse and some of the secondary maybe had some slip-ups or they didn't have the best performance they could have had, but this was a defense that always made the adjustments, always better in the second half of the game, always figured out from their first couple drives what they're going to do, and they just mastered how to stop you from there. So, that they're the biggest reason why we only had 3 games that were even within 1 score this year. And even all of those besides Clemson, the Boston College game, you win by 2, were some dumb mistakes at the end. And then Miami give up a late touchdown where 2 guys run into each other. Other than that, no other game actually really had a close outcome by the time that it was ended. So, yeah, Florida State wins the ACC first time since 2014. And it was a gritty performance. They got it done in just about every aspect you can imagine. So, yeah, proud of the guys. I really am. However, I know you guys already want to know how I feel about the playoff committee, so let's just jump to that. I've been polite to this point, just to not even bring it up.
Yeah. I think what's best is I'll be the middleman in this, and I'll kind of just point at both sides, and I'm just gonna let you ride, Brandon, and I'll let Jared ride.
So for this entire season, Florida State was number 3 or number 4 the entire year, and I went to bed Saturday night thinking, this is fine. There's really nothing to worry about here. I had my blips. I had my doubts. Even a month ago, I said, there's a small possibility of this. All of that has subsided. And when the announcement came out and I saw Alabama's name flash up, I was just beside myself. I could not believe it. I am still trying to figure out the answer to the justification for it, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm taken back. This was something, we've known the history of Bobby Bowden joining the ACC back in 1991, playing the first season in 92. He was very open about, I'm going to run through the ACC because I'm tired of going on the road, playing all these tough games again as an independent, only to not have a shot to win. Or it's the Coast Clause against Miami. So even back in the 90s when we joined this conference, it was a strategic decision. And here we are, fast forward this far, and this is the first time it finally bit us. 2023 was the first time it actually finally hurt us to say, you know what, we're in the ACC. And SEC it had some good spots this year, but probably not as good as they always were. Just to say that the champion the ACC is not as good as the SEC champ. And I'm trying to figure out the criteria here, right? Because power rankings and Florida State is not one of the 4 best teams in the country. I don't think there's any argument to that. But if you're going to go back to the 4 best deserving, then definitely. And I'm just kind of blown away just to see both of those teams, 3 and 4, jump 4 spots, Texas and Alabama, and for us to jump down. Yeah, I'm at a loss here. I really don't understand how this happens without starting to point political fingers or going conspiracy theory. And I know you guys have some things to say about that, and that's fine. I welcome it. But I'm just dumbfounded. I really am.
Yeah, I'll kind of when I was looking at it, and I'll just lay my stuff out there, and Jared, you can jump in. I know you're probably more passionate than I am about it, but looking at it, it kind of, to me, it comes down to best versus deserving, right? That's kind of the argument that you just mentioned too. And what is the criteria? I think, is it the best team? Is it the most deserving team? Is it someone that kind of meets in the middle there, right? And I see the points why I understand why they got left out, but at the very same time, I understand why Florida State fans are mad. Like, I told if it was the roles were reversed, I would be upset too. If it's the best team, I mean, if you compare them to the other four teams, are they the best? I mean, just looking at Saturday, and I don't know if they're one of the best teams to get in there. A lot of it, I mean, unfortunately, has to do with Jordan Travis being out. If he doesn't get hurt, and they beat Florida by more, they beat Louisville by more, then I think you can make an argument for them being one of the best teams. But as it is, I don't think they're one of the best teams. Now, is that Florida State's fault? I don't think so. They didn't control his leg breaking like it did or when it did. But as far as the best teams, the best deserving teams, they did go undefeated. Very impressive. They did beat LSU pretty handily earlier in the year. Impressive. They won their championship game. Also impressive. The rest of their schedule, I don't know if that really holds up to the other teams. Again, is that their fault? Right? I don't think it's their fault. They can control what's on the field, and they did that. They beat everyone they played. And it stinks, but I think as a Florida State fan, you love the way your defense dominated Louisville. But as an outside fan watching that game, if you're in that committee watching the Louisville-Florida State game, and then you watch Texas dominate, who they played, Alabama beating the number one team in the country, two-time defending champs, and then Florida State putting up 3 points in the first half and then winning by 10 versus an inept Louisville team. Is that Florida State's fault? I don't know, but I think that's also a factor into it as well. So I see the points why they would be in. I see why the points they would be out, but I get it as a Florida State fan why you would be upset. And we were just talking about the last episode. I was like, it was hard for me to say, oh, they go undefeated and they get left out. Because what if they win their bowl game and they're undefeated afterwards, and this exact scenario played out. So that's the point. That's what I think the committee factored into why they left them out. Again, is it really Florida State's fault though? I'm not really sure. It's not their fault. Jordan Travis got hurt. It's not their fault. Their opponents, Florida included, didn't live up. Like Clemson, they were awful. Duke started off good, but they turned out awful. Miami didn't do well. Florida was awful. Louisville, the week before, loses to a Kentucky team. So is that Florida State's fault? No, but I think those are factors into why they got let out. And also the eyeball test on championship week, when everyone's watching all these potential teams to go in, it just wasn't an entertaining game, and it wasn't as dominating as, say, other teams were, and as impressive as you want. And again, Florida State won the ball game, held them to 6. Fair, unfair, I think that's a factor, is the eyeball test. So I see why they're left out, but I also understand if you are a Florida State fan why you're upset, because it kind of feels unfair. You did everything within your control, and it still wasn't good enough to get there.
Yeah. I don't know that I'll have much to add to that, but I will have a few questions, I guess. So Um, I guess so. Let me start out with Brandon here real
Mhm.
quick. So you obviously you followed this team closely. You've seen what they've done. If part of the criteria in the playoff committee was key players being out, okay, whatever. Strength of schedule, okay, whatever. Do you feel? I guess do either of you feel? But I'll talk to Brandon real quick. So do you feel like that is a situation where maybe the whole season isn't being taken into account?
It's from top to bottom. Florida State beat 8 teams who are going to a bowl game.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at the other schedules, I don't think they match up to that. Season top to bottom, I feel like that was probably glossed over. So that'll partially answer that question, Jared. Thank you for it. I think that there is probably a lot of focus on Jordan Travis being out. Now, you can't just ignore that. My my gripe here and the question I have for the committee is how much are we weighing that into, okay, well, a future game is going to look like this. I don't think that looking forward is totally fair with that criteria, but I also understand you've been bit before where you've sent teams that couldn't perform and got beat out. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. So I think as a whole, probably that is a concern. The whole season not considering as much as it should be.
The other question I would have, Brandon. The other question I would have is if Tate Rodemaker, or let's say Brock Glenn. Brock Glenn played. But let's say, Tate or Brock. Say Tate doesn't get hurt at the end of the Florida game, right? Question will hit there. I thought it was a late hit. I didn't think it was vicious. I don't think it was intentional, but that's just I'm a Florida Gator fan, so maybe the orange and blue glasses are on there. But I if Tate doesn't go out, right, and you come in, you beat Louisville 35-14, you beat Louisville, like you beat most teams all year of that caliber. Or even if Brock comes in, the offense still moves, maybe it's a 28-3 game, 28-7 game. Do you feel like then Alabama would have still jumped Florida State? Like, in your own personal opinion, do you feel like if they win those games, convincingly, do you feel like that this is even a debate?
It's a tough question to answer. I think the debate still rages
Yeah.
because the other thing to consider is we will have Tate for the bowl game or the what would have been the playoff. So,
Mm-hmm.
Brock Glenn is not going to be playing in the Orange Bowl. He would not have been playing in a semifinal game. And that's something that also I don't know if the attention was brought to that. But I asked you this question, Jared. I said, does it even matter if Jordan Travis was healthy the last 3 weeks of the year? Are we
Yeah, and
talking about a full strength Florida State team? Are they better than Alabama, or do they get in the playoff?
so here's what I like to think, right? So I would like to think if Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt, Florida State's going to coast into the college football playoff. I really do feel like that was the scenario. You look at the level he was playing at, and then what he had done all year long. Obviously, they're going to go in, they're going to beat Florida, especially with a backup quarterback like Brown, right? And then you're going to go in, you're going to destroy Louisville, and then I don't even think that's a question. So to me, um, if Jordan Travis is there, like I don't even think this is a debate. Now, obviously, maybe it is. What leg would Alabama or Georgia have to stand on if Jordan Travis isn't hurt? He goes in, you're going to win every game by 3 or 4 scores for the rest of the season, and you're going to cap off that, and it's going to be a totally different. And you might even be favored by Vegas in the first round.
Absolutely. I really do believe that.
That's what I think. Now, however, I will say this. Now, in my opinion, and this is the hot take part of it, I guess. I think the committee got it right. But here, let me. I have 2 things here. A, I do think the committee got it right. Washington and Michigan are your top 2 teams in the country. There's no debate about that. Texas, they win the Big 12. That OU loss is glaring, but what the committee told us all year is they didn't really care about it, and Brandon already mentioned it. The whole season just isn't being taken into account at this point. You're looking at like these last 2 games, which I think is a travesty of the way we gauge this metric of college football,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that you have to be able to look at the whole year and you growth in that. So, I think Texas is probably in. Obviously, they have that head-to-head of Bama, and Bama is beat Georgia. So, with Alabama beating Georgia, I thought going into the week that the SEC championship was a de facto play into the playoff. I thought that Washington and Michigan were in. I thought Texas was in, and I thought the winner of Georgia and Alabama would get into the playoff. Not because I didn't think Florida State was deserving, just because without Jordan Travis, I thought that team, had fallen off, and they won't be favored in Vegas in that first round. So for me, looking at it as just a college football fan, and I mean, I'm not even talking as a Gator fan. I'm just talking as a college football fan. Those were kind of what I thought it should be and it would be. However, I will say this: there is no transparency in what the committee. We can read the website, we can read the criteria of it, but there's no transparency of how it's being gauged, how it's being weighted. What are these reasons? There's no interviews into the committee. There's no way to sort of gauge these metrics or understand what the decision making is. It's just here's your 4 teams. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. So I think that part is trash. And here's the thing about this: the playoff has been garbage the entire time. Ever since we went to four teams, this thing has been really dumb. It's been stupid. There's been issues with it every year. You can say, "Oh, well, they got the 4 teams right." Maybe they did, but how are we in a sport as popular as college football? In a sport as growing as the speed of growth of college football, you cannot decide your championship by a group of people that you don't even know who all's in the group, and you don't even know what they're watching and how they're watching. Yep. Is this just like a Heisman sort of trophy where you're just sitting in ballots and you've never seen these people play? Because honestly, that could be what it is, and we would never know.
Right.
So here's the other part of it. If the BCS, you can laugh if you want, if the BCS is still involved, we have no debate. It's Michigan, it's Washington, and that's your national championship game. And there's all there is to it. Now, so-and-so went undefeated. Great, but we saw that happen. Look at Auburn in 2005, right? And we know, okay, they didn't get a play. All right, fine. They didn't. That's just what happened.
Yep.
1993, which the BCS didn't exist, right? West Virginia goes undefeated. Florida State plays for the title and wins. So the playoff doesn't work. And here's the other thing. You can sit here and be like, okay, well, let's take it to 12 teams or let's take it to 8 teams. Why? So Georgia and Alabama won't matter at all. Oh, we lose the game, we're both in. Who cares? So Washington and Wazoo doesn't matter. Oh, okay, well, Washington loses the game to a rival. It doesn't matter. We're still just going to get the 5 seed. Michigan, Ohio State. It is stupid that we're talking about playoff expansion. Now, what happened with Florida State is garbage, right? Because we should have had. But here's all you had to do. Hey, in the event that, 3 teams are undefeated, there's going to be a play-in game.
There you go.
Florida State and Alabama are going to line it up.
Or you should have said if you're an undefeated Power 5 champion, you're automatically in, or you're not. You set the criteria ahead of time. And the BCS, to go back to that, the idea behind the committee was to get us rid of the computer bias. Hey, by the way, the computer has this. It's just numbers. Well, why don't we put humans to decide it? Oh, okay, that didn't work either, and we tried it for 10 years.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing,
too, Brandon,
on that. Here's the thing, too, Brandon, on that is who are the humans deciding? They don't have these are ADs from conferences who may have an interest in their school playing in a playoff.
Absolutely. Jim Grobe, who used to be a Wake Forest coach, is on this committee. What was his opinion and take on this?
So I think that even though you and I probably disagree in that who got in should be in, I think what we would agree on is that this is a very broken system. And I'm going to tell you both the truth. I don't think expanding it is going to fix the problem. I really don't.
It'll now ruin, back to your point of it's going to ruin the end of the season where you're saying, okay, well, I can sit this guy, Caleb Williams, you don't want to play for USC anymore. Okay. You're not playing in the bowl game. Brock Bowers, why don't you just rest against the SEC championship game? Don't need you for that. We're number 1. Who cares if we lose? And Michigan, Ohio State, if they're getting rid of divisions, right? Okay. Well, we're going to see you again next week anyway. Who cares about this game in, Ann Arbor? Heck, if they do something stupid and the playoff is going to expand to 12, Michigan will have to play each other 3 times a year.
Do you think that would? Oh, go ahead.
Not only that, Brandon, you just mentioned it. I do want to hear what you have to say, Chris. But not only that, but you just mentioned it. There's a very real possibility that next season we're existing in a world where starters are going to be resting for conference championship games. Yep. Think about that.
Yeah. Well, that was That's what I was saying. Like, my next point was like, do we get away with conference championship games? Do we do away with them? Like, if they're just another opportunity for us to lose.
Well, that's the other thing here is, would Florida State, let's go back to a world before the SEC started the title game, which I thought at the time was a very good idea. Since then, I'm not so sure. The whole design of it was give you an extra win against a ranked team, right? Okay, that'll give you a boost in the polls, and then the BCS came and says, hey, it's going to give us a boost in the computer rankings, and then the playoff, it gives us one more game for them to be watching, which, hate to point fingers or, look at politics, but gosh, that may be the only day they're watching football at all at this point. So now that you're having this dilemma and you have these matchups where it's going into a 12-team playoff, you're right in the conference championship game itself really shouldn't happen, and the conferences may wise up to that. It's just asinine, and I don't get it. I'm beside myself again to see Florida State after all this. It's not like we haven't proven ourselves, not just now, but in 2013 and 2014 and all the other seasons when we had the program built and we had a team that was undefeated or one loss that deserved to be in there. It's not like it was the 2017 UCF. It wasn't like it was 04 Utah. These aren't non-competitive teams or conferences that we're playing in. It just blows my mind. That's the reward that we're getting. I don't think it matches the season we had.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, they're not really taking earlier games earlier in the schedule being a factor. I mean, if you just so FSU obviously is not the same team as they were earlier because of the injury, right? I mean, on the flip side, Alabama was not the same team earlier. Like, if we're looking at the team as a whole, they did lose at home by 10. I mean, to Texas, who was in the playoff, but still a loss. And then the next game, they played horrible against South Florida.
Yep.
Nearly lost that game. But you look over that, right? Because right now they are playing a lot better, and they have gotten better as the season has gone. They picked up some ranked wins, Tennessee, LSU, and then beating the number one team, Georgia. But they also, just a week ago, needed a miracle to beat Auburn. Yeah. I mean, they're one play away from not even being a factor. But I think, or really, honestly, I know Brandon kind of alluded to this. The championship games had a huge sway. Just the way that they looked, all teams, the way that they all looked, really had a big sway as to who got in, who didn't get in. Because if you take the whole thing as the whole schedule for Alabama, there's some impressive stuff there, but there's some also big glaring issues in their schedule. I mean, especially if you're going to compare it to Florida State's.
And it's crazy that you mentioned, okay, a team got better throughout the season, because this was the joke for Florida State in the 90s. Like, okay, we're going to have a loss, get it out of the way early, do it in September. In 97, we lost to NC State. Then we also lost Chris Winkie in that game. Went on to play for the national championship against Tennessee. Had to do it with the third-string quarterback. Sound familiar? That was the joke then. Okay, Florida State didn't think they had a shot in 93 because they lost to Notre Dame later in the year, but Notre Dame did them a favor and lost the following week to Boston College. So whose loss in the season was earlier? Florida State. Okay, enough time to jump back up. It's crazy to me. I'm talking about this. BCS and the playoff was designed to take all this away, and somehow, Jared, we have regressed in 30 years. We're right back to where we started.
In 2023, in the year of our Lord, 2023, when the playoff rolled out, every single person, including myself, every college football fan was like, well, what's going to happen when chaos scenario? People have been talking about this forever, since the first playoff. People have been like, oh, okay, well, this works until XYZ. And I mentioned this already, but fellas, it's December the 5th, year of our Lord 2023, December the 5th. We've had a decade of the current system here, and you're telling me at no point did anyone on the committee say, you know what, the first playoff game isn't until New Year's Day. We wrap the season up on December the 3rd. You're gonna tell me that nobody was like, you know what, we might need, the NBA, they have a playoff series. Mm-hmm. How hard is it to get a team have a neutral site, go by record. So maybe the game's in Orlando, or, Tampa. I know the NFL season's going on, but there's 3 stadiums here in the state of Florida.
Yep.
Not everybody's probably at home. Jacksonville, Tampa, you got Miami, you got Orlando. There's plenty of sites.
Mm-hmm.
How hard would it be to say, oh, you know what? Alabama, Florida State, there's a play-in for the 4th spot. We'll see you on December the 9th in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes, you will.
There's no metric, or there's no barrier, there's no roadblock. At the beginning of the year, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, hey, by the way, in event of this scenario, the committee has the power to schedule another game. This is all about money, anyways. You're gonna tell me that Florida State fans and Alabama fans wouldn't sell out any stadium in the country to go watch this play-in game to see who goes in a month to play in a playoff game?
Exactly.
The only thing with that I would counter is if you did that 1 year, you're setting a precedent where every year that 5th team is going to flip out and complain.
Well,
but I don't think it would have to be as needed basis. I think you'd have to make it like almost like the top 6 get in, the first 2 get a bye, or something like that. Because if you do that, because if you say, okay, you know what, FSU got screwed, let's face them against Alabama. Well, the next year, whoever's number 5 or 6, if they're even close to what FSU did, they're going, no, see, you did that last year, so you need to do it this year too for us.
My only rebuttal would that be, in 10 years, how many times have we needed a scenario like this?
Yeah. But
in 23 years, it's
right.
happened, 3 times?
We didn't need it. We did not need it. You're right. But you do it one time. One time, I'm seeing other teams go, well, they did it for them. Why not for us?
And here's the bigger deal now. They knew this was the last year of the 4-team format. They knew there was no recourse on this at all. They said, you know what, we can make any decision we want now, and next year we're just going to wash our hands of it and say, you know what, there's going to be 12 teams next year. That's 2024's problem. Sorry about your luck.
Yeah. Maybe it was all a big conspiracy to boost the 12-team playoff so everyone gets on board with it.
You said it first. I didn't.
I've been thinking about that.
I think they had an out here. I think they really thought, you know what, we really think the SEC championship is good, and we can just point to Jordan Travis's injury and don't have to worry about it from here. I really think that's what it was.
Here's if you want to go down conspiracy lane, here's the problem with this. Here's the problem with this, man. College football fans are far too passionate and will spend way too much money to ever really affect the bottom line of any TV deal. So here's my example of this. When the offseason came last year and they rolled out all these new rules. Oh, well, the clock's not going to stop after this, or all these minor rules to make it more, like an NFL game, to add in more commercial time. Did it affect the game? Were the games any shorter, fellas? No, they weren't.
Nope.
Go back and look at those run times. Did it shorten the game? No. But what it did was it let Allstate run about 75 more commercials.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now, and here's the thing, I love my team, and we're trash. I get it. We're not a good football team this year. We weren't a great football team last year, but I still spent money. I still moved to the state of Florida. Well, it wasn't so I could go watch college football game. That would be a lot. But I still took advantage of me moving back to the state of Florida to go to several games.
Sure.
I would wake up on Saturday morning. Oh, you know what? I can make Gainesville by 7:00 tonight. Let me go to this game, and I did. Mm-hmm. I was able to see Chris and able to go. So they know we're going to be dumb enough to spend the money to buy the gear. So they're going to make whatever changes they want because we're never going to. Voices on Twitter and the X app are not going to be enough to ever put a stopgap in anything. So. They're going to continue to roll out the 12-team playoff. They're going to take away everything that this became a doomsday speech, but they're going to take away everything that makes the sport great, and they're going to give us it. We're just going to deal with it. And honestly, fellas, that's probably what's going to happen.
It's already happening. I mean, UCF is not even exempt to that as a brand new member of a Power 5 conference. They've already told me, okay, the price for the season tickets increased next year. Oh, and by the way, you have to buy one more season ticket to keep a parking pass. Oh, and by the way, it's $75 to keep these plastic seat backs, which make your seating experience worse
Mm-hmm.
somehow. Oh, and sodas are $8 for a souvenir cup, and $4 for a refill. Plus, we're not providing the free water anymore.
Your guys are describing a very toxic, abusive relationship. I can't tell the difference.
And here's the problem: we're too scared to leave it. We're too scared to leave it, Chris. We're not going to leave it. We're just going to give ourselves. You know what?
We're going to make excuses.
I deserve this. What we're going to tell ourselves.
We can fix it. We can fix it.
Yeah, it's and to bring it back full circle and to get off of my doomsday speech, I think that the fans are still going to make the sport great. I think the fans still, have a lot of passion and stuff for these schools and these things. And I think in the era of NIL and all of this stuff, as we get more away from, just like this used to be, I remember growing up and this college football used to be this thing that was like it was like from birth. It was this sort of just fandom that superseded anything. I grew up watching the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys and all that stuff. And every Sunday we'd go to my grandma's and we'd watch these games and we'd all, have a brisket and, it would be a whole Texas event. And when I discovered college football and I discovered that, oh man, there's a whole world where, fans gather on these campuses across the country to watch their team and to wear these colors and you support this team win or lose, in all kinds of weather, I always say, we say in Gainesville and you do these things, there's a magic there. And maybe you lose that game 10-7. Maybe you lose that game, 21-0. Maybe it's a bad day. Maybe you're walking out of that stadium but you're walking next to your buddy and you're both wearing those colors and maybe we'll get them next week. And there's that hope that existed, in these college campuses, in these stadiums, these hallowed grounds, these sort of churches, and maybe you win, and maybe you have that magical season, like in 1993 or 1996, or 2000. Maybe you have that 2013 sort of magic, and you ride that wave. But I think that, and I was pretty vocal about it before. If you take away what matters and those wins and those losses and that week in and week out, you lose it. You're just like the NFL. The Cowboys are 9-3. We're still probably going to be number one. Beat the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to be number one seed. Yay. But if you lose that game, do you lose that game to Alabama or Georgia in the SEC championship? If Tim Tebow loses that game in 2010 to Alabama or 9, we don't get to go anywhere, and your season's over, and you ride or die with that feeling. And it's a shame that's what we're up against, and that's what we're going to see. I think the fans are still going to carry it, and the fans are still going to make this what it is. But I do think next year's podcast, I think next season is going to look a little different because, will it matter if UCF loses to Oklahoma State or Texas Tech or whatever? I don't know, but because they may still make the title game.
Exactly.
So it's not all bleak. I'm still gonna throw my Gator hat on and we're still gonna ride or die with them. But it is crummy. And even though Brandon and I disagree on what 4 playoff teams probably should be in, I think we both agree that there was an opportunity here to sort of like save Ferris Bueller, to sort of save the day. And the committee could have made the decision to be like, you know what, it's the last year of this 4-team. We can easily get a game, and maybe Alabama blows them out. Maybe Brock Glenn can't get it done, but at least we know.
Yeah.
And that's what college football is really about. And at the end of the day, you're going to line it up and you're going to find out.
Yeah, and we had the biggest thing for us is we had earned a spot. And I appreciate our take here because you're right, we do disagree, and that's fine. But that's what I love about us is we can still have an honest conversation about it and not go psycho about it. That's awesome. But yeah, the sport we grew up with, it's essentially gone. And I think you ever heard the quote, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder," which, by the way, I've got a whole poem for you guys in a second. Hold on. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So, I mean, there was a day in time, me growing up in the 90s, and all of us are pretty much about the same age. I was like, hey, not all these games are going to be televised. You got to want to see it, or you got to actually be there. Or heck, worst comes to worst, I got to catch it in the newspaper tomorrow morning because I'm not going to get to watch this game. Now it's everywhere. And it's not because of technology, right? Because if you really want to look up college baseball, not easy to find. Okay? The sport itself has evolved and it's so popular now. It's just not the sport it was when we were growing up in the 90s with it. And I think that's changed the fandom. I think that's changed the experience. It's become very corporate. And you know what? Florida State fans, this is the price you pay. Okay? It really, really is. I'm going to make a t-shirt, and if I get to make it to the Orange Bowl, that says, I'm the only happy Florida State fan to be here. All right? And it's totally true. And I think that's what's going to get lost, and we'll do poll predictions probably later. But that is a great reward. The Orange Bowl has been very good to us. It's the bowl game we played in the most. And it is going to be it's very hard to be happy at that game. And I fully understand that. But if you really want to keep this team together and reward yourself for going 13-0, you have to show up in this game. You have to show pride for your school and for your university and for your coach and for your other players, who literally gave everything they had. It's been a wild ride, but man, what an unlikely season for the Noles. And it's just devastating to see it happen this way. Just to be that close, just inches away from going to the playoff itself.
Yeah. When you guys were getting all nostalgic on me there, I was thinking too, like, I think Jared and I talked about this before the season when they were doing all the minor rule changes to the clock and stuff. The one thing that we loved, about college football, one of the greatest things about college football, like, you know my love for the NCAA football game, right? And it's finally coming back apparently on PS5 next year. Mm-hmm. Looking forward to that, right? One of the greatest things I loved about that was that it looked, it sounded, it felt different than Madden. And mm-hmm. I was awful at Madden, but it just the gameplay was different. You can control your players different. It was just, I don't know, it was just a lot better, right? That's one thing I love about college football is it's not the NFL. NFL is great. It's cool for what it is. But college football is just better because up until now, every single game mattered. Mm-hmm. That's what really separated college football and the NFL. Separated college football in pretty much any sport, really, was every game you felt, every game, every play, every decision was so important. So important. Everything mattered. And if you're a Florida State fan, you're like, nothing matters now. It's the complete opposite. Like, and Jared mentioned, every season you have this, even if you're coming off a 5-7 year, next year, guess what? Game 1, I'm like, oh, you know what? We got a shot.
Yep.
We got a shot. We have hope. If you're a Florida State fan, what hope do you got? And not to be too gloom, but I'm just saying I empathize with you guys. Like, I see why you're so mad because you did every single thing that you were told or you were supposed to do, and you would succeed and have a shot, and yet you're looking outside. And so I get it. I 100% get it because that hope is gone. That joy is gone. That feeling of we got a shot, it's gone. So going into next year, like Jared said, the podcast is going to be different. Like, okay, cool. We had this great season. Why even play this next game? Why do you play this? Because we're not guaranteed to get in anyways. So yeah, I get the frustration. I totally get the frustration, 100%.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, Chris, and I don't want to keep this going, but the conspiracy theory going. But you know what? They sold you. They sold you, like a lame duck, because they told you, like, you know what? Every game's not going to matter, but you know what? Like, Alabama's going to play Oklahoma in week 3. And Florida's going to go to Austin, and that's awesome. That's great. That's a great thing, and I'm excited for those trips and those new matchups. But you know what? I don't really care because, like, so what if we play USF in week 2 or week 13? Furman comes to town. We were still going to Utah, like we still went out there and played that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not one or the other. You could have easily still had marquee non-conference matchups, scheduled somebody to, move some money around and get, like a D3 team or something here or there, and still had the same competitive conference you had. So, like, great. The SEC is expanding, and Texas and Oklahoma are coming over, and I'm excited for that. But I could have had that happen without a 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts on this, Brandon. And you can decline. You can say next question or just I don't know yet. I don't know is an answer, by the way. So let's just say big what ifs, tons of what ifs. Right?
But hang on, I think I already know what you're going to ask.
You know where I'm going with this?
And the answer is no. I'm not going to hang a national championship banner if we beat Georgia.
You know me too well.
Not going to do it. And you know what? I have enough respect for this sport that I don't want to do that. Okay? If you win it or you don't. We agreed to this. This was the committee. This is what you knew you had to get in the top 4. Whether or not we like it and we felt like we deserved to be in without question, I said the same thing the very first year of our podcast, Chris, if you can believe it. Because that was the year that Alabama beat Georgia in the national championship and UCF went undefeated, and you asked me the same question. And I said, no, Alabama's the national champion. In my house, despite the fact that UCF's my number 2 team, and I have 2 family members who are either students or alumni, the answer is unequivocally Alabama is the national champion, and whoever wins this 14 playoff as well.
Okay. Even if one of the one-loss teams wins it all.
Nope.
Okay. That's my
I shouldn't have hesitated there, but I did. Sorry.
No, no I mean, you're human.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like,
and so hopefully that speaks to my character with this to not have harsh feelings, but maybe this poem says otherwise.
Okay.
It's called The Playoff Road Not Taken. 2 roads diverged in a college football would, and sorry Florida State could not travel both. Be one traveler long we stood, and looked on one as far as we could, to where it bent in the corruption and politics of the sport. Then took the Orange Bowl, just as fair, having perhaps the better team because it was Georgia, and they were in despair. The committee passing both teams over there had really warned them really about the same. And both that selection Sunday morning equally lay in seasons no step had trodden black. Oh, we kept the playoff for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if Florida State should ever make it back. We shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Did you write that? Did you?
There is a Robert Frost poem called The Road Not Taken, and I took some liberties with it.
You wrote that.
That's
impressive.
It's phenomenal.
Impressive.
And I think that you summed up a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings that are kind of throughout your fan base, you know, since the selection Sunday. And you know, I mean, obviously, you know, Chris and I are Gator fans, and here's the thing, like, you know, we say this means more in the SEC, and I think it means more to everybody. So, you know, I think Chris and I are pretty empathetic. You know, we're not Florida State fans by any stretch of anyone's imagination, but we're fans of the people. We're fans of the fans. You know,
yeah.
And you know, Chris and I have many fans across this fan base. That, you know, Florida State, and some of those relationships have defined, you know, our youth and our lives. So, yeah, man, we feel for y'all. You know, we hate it. We hate it that this is the way it played out. You know, and so yeah, our heart goes out to that. That was fantastic. I think you did a great job of kind of putting all those feelings in perspective.
Yeah, because it's never a question of, you know, do you love your team more than I? We never question each other's fanhood, and so, you know, whether or not people believe the SEC is a better conference, which I've believed for quite a few years, this year or not, you can debate that. I don't wish to go down the road anymore. I've seen too much of it this week, but there's never a question that you guys love the Gators any less than I love the Noles. And so every fan across this sport knows what their team means to them. And I'm glad that you guys can kind of understand that. I really do. I don't never expect you to feel sad for me. Never wanted that. That's ridiculous. You know, it's the hand we were dealt, and we're just going to play in the Orange Bowl and do the best we can. But I really do know that you guys feel it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be 100% honest, transparent. I'm a Florida Gator fan. I don't know if you guys were aware of
I've
that.
heard.
So not seeing Georgia or Florida State get in, I mean, that does make me happy. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I do take joy from that, being a Gator fan. But on the other side of that coin, I am a college football fan. I am a fan of Brandon. So I get it. Like, I 100%, I'm not here to gloat, but I get it. Like, I get why you would feel that way. And I'm like, man, if I was in their shoes, I would feel the exact same way. I would feel so upset. I would be so upset if I was in their shoes.
Yeah, if this was me, I'd be saying no words this entire time.
Yeah.
You could probably, like you mentioned already, you could tell my demeanor is very different today than it usually is, and
yeah,
it's hard to hide that. Impossible.
Understandably.
So, this is a college football podcast, and we do talk college football. So I have to ask, who wins the title?
Ooh. Honestly, I think Bama will beat Michigan. I don't know after that.
That's interesting. Am I crazy to think probably college football fans out there thinks it's going to be either Michigan or Bama? I'm not sure. I haven't asked around a whole lot yet. I've been kind of involved the last 48 hours. But I've actually said for a month I think Michigan was the best team in the country. And after they beat Ohio State, it kind of cemented it for me. It is impossible to overlook the greatest coach in the sport of this game and say you're not going to beat Michigan, because that is a very good possibility. And if you saw the reaction when Michigan saw they're playing Bama, they were already scared. Yep. And rightfully so. Bama has done it over and over again. They've won 3 of the playoffs. I'm going to actually stick with Michigan here, Jared, to answer your question. I think that this may be the year they finally get it done, and I don't think Washington or Texas, whoever wins that one, will match up to the winner.
So I've had bad takes all year long in these predictions, and today is going to be no different. I said the beginning of the year, I think on this very podcast, that I thought the Pac-12 was top to bottom the best conference in college football this season. And I think when you look at Oregon, you look at Arizona, you look at Utah, there's a lot of teams who won a lot of games and looked really good doing it. Now, obviously, Colorado's trash and, whatever. But you have, for the most part here, I think the Pac-12 was the best conference top to bottom. I don't think they have a Bama. I don't think they have a Georgia. I don't think they have that dominant team. But Michael Penix Jr. is the man. And he's not going to win the Heisman because Jaden Daniels edged him out. But the Washington Huskies are going to be this year's national champions. It's going to happen. Watch.
How about that?
I was going to say the only team I think – I mean, like Brandon said, because they have Saban as their coach, I would put Bama in the title game. And I was like, well – of the two, I would say Washington has a better chance of getting to there and winning it. You think as a Florida fan and SEC fan, I'm rooting for Alabama, but that's not the case at all.
Okay,
I do not want to see them win. I'm done. Cool. They did their part. As a Florida fan, okay. they did their part. Now they can lose. But I would say Alabama versus Washington. Who's going to win it? I'm going to say Alabama. I don't like it. I don't want it. But just when you count Saban out, just when you tick him off, because everyone does not want Alabama to win now. You think people didn't like Alabama before? You think the nation hated Alabama before this controversy?
Oh.
Nobody in outside of Tuscaloosa wants Alabama to win.
Yeah,
that's fuel fire for Saban. So
I've never hated Alabama, but I've never loved the SEC. I respect him as an opponent. I respect him as a member of the conference. I think what Nick Saban's done there is, obviously, no one's ever done in college football before. But this weird thing where people like cheer for the conference, like I've never been a part of that. I think Chris is known, and I think he probably feels the same. Like I've been very vocal that like I hate absolutely everybody that is not in Gainesville, Florida. Like I don't care. You can lose all your games. It don't matter to me.
Yeah. Now, I will say now, if it's like, say, in a bowl game and it's, say, Ole Miss versus Louisville, I'll go for SEC. But there's no, I mean, if I can avoid it, I'm not rooting for Tennessee or Georgia.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, if I can't avoid it, I'm not rooting for Alabama. Like,
I've never found myself in a position to root for him. Like, I just hate everybody. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't like anybody. I don't have any friends that went to Tennessee. And if I did, then I don't know. We're probably not friends. So I don't. It's always been a weird narrative to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I don't care. But I think, I don't know, man. I just feel like the Huskies are gonna get it done, dude. I'm just feeling Michael Penix, and he's got NFL wide receivers. He's got a great running back. I think their defense is gonna do just enough.
I'm gonna tell you, I hope it's Washington, just 'cause I think it's funny that they win after the Pac-12 goes away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just for the irony of it, I want to go for Washington.
And I don't like Texas either.
Yeah, I know.
Texas. It was just somebody told me that it's just an awkward championship Saturday altogether because Texas booed their own commissioner on their way out of the Big 12 to go to the SEC. The Pac-12 commissioner had to give the trophy to a team because he couldn't keep a league together because he got a deal from Apple TV and said no to it. So everybody said bye. The ACC had to hand over a trophy to Florida State, who earlier this year said, "You're not giving us enough money and we want to look elsewhere. By the way, we're going to win it all in the ACC." And the SEC is as dominant as it always is. And the Big Ten once again failed because they're like, okay, I guess we're sending somebody from the other division that can't score anything. How many other times has a conference championship had somebody score 0 points?
Well, it was almost 2.
Well, how many
2 this week?
How many times has Iowa played in it? Because that's how many times.
Wisconsin got shut out one year. They were talking about 56-0. I mean,
the Big Ten West is the worst division in all of college football.
It's ridiculous. And so, it was just an awkward day. SMU wins the American bye. We're leaving for the ACC. Thanks a lot. Our first championship since 1984. And the controversy. Okay, we'll take the trophy and leave. It was just a weird day all around. It is. The season didn't end up matching 2007, but it had a unique personality to it.
I was just about to say the exact same thing. We thought it was going to get crazy, and it didn't. And then it did.
It really did. It really did. I'm not glad that college football is over. Obviously, we still have a lot of college football left. We got over a month of the sport left. So I'm happy that we still get to watch these games. But, I'm glad that the nonsense of what it became this year is over. Even though it's only going to come back worse next year. And I'll complain about then because at this point I'm basically like 80 years old, just telling people to get off my lawn. So,
you brought up a point, Brandon. I want to ask you, after all this goes down the way it goes down, and earlier in the season when there was talks of FSU might be leaving the ACC, right, does this push them away from the ACC? Maybe not to the SEC necessarily, but does this solidify their, like, you know what? Forget the ACC. We ran the ACC and it got us nowhere.
So it adds a lot of fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
The other thing at play here is that Boo Corrigan is the chair of the College Football Playoff Committee. His father, was the very person who brought Florida State in the ACC to begin with. You talk about irony.
Yeah.
His son may be the one that makes us leave because they didn't stand up and put us in the playoff. And, be that as it may, when Florida State just looks, if you're just looking at it from a business deal, because Florida State's not immune to that, and we've been guilty of it too. We're like, hey, the revenue payouts and the contract is $120 million to leave the ACC. And even then you have to negotiate a rights contract beyond that. The money that we're going to be losing this year from not being in the playoff, I think, was $2 million. Plus, get this: Louisville was going to take the Orange Bowl after we went into the playoff. Now they don't get it, so we only send one team to New Year's Six at all. So that's more revenue we lose out on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it adds a lot of fuel to the fire. I don't know for sure if that's what happens. I really thought with adding SMU, Sanford, Cal, that would help mitigate some of this, because I think SMU even said we'll not take revenue for like 5 to 9 years kind of deal just to join the ACC.
That's crazy.
So really? I can't say for sure that's enough for Florida State to leave. They may hang around for a while. The contract that we're in is just airtight, and we can't get out of it. 2035 is when it ends. I can't imagine, Chris, in 2036 we're talking about Florida State in the ACC, though.
Yeah. I think as soon as they can get out, they're going to get out.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting, because what does the college football landscape even look like, in 2036? These conferences are even going to exist at that point. There's probably a real situation where the ACC goes by the way of the Pac-12.
Could be. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Where that's going to end up, but yeah, I think you're right. If that contract was up tomorrow, they probably wouldn't be in, right? So,
yep. It's
just kind of one of those money issues. SMU not taking that money is interesting too, but for a lot of fans that don't know, SMU, like A&M, is a very, very wealthy school.
They raised like millions of dollars overnight when they said they were joining the ACC. Just donors just piled in the dough.
Yeah, it's not even funny how much money is. I don't know if y'all ever been on campus at SMU or like been around that area of Dallas, but yeah, let me tell you, man, that's a whole other world over there. So just like A&M, like Texas, a lot of dollars flowing through there. So that's interesting that they were doing that, but I get it. I get it. I understand that it wouldn't be really an issue for them.
Craziness. Thanks for the questions, guys. I appreciate the platform too. Obviously that's why we started the show, so we could air some grievances, right? And
I have one more question, Brandon.
Yo.
One more question. Even with the injury, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, but even with the injury, where do you rank Jordan Travis all time?
Like Florida State quarterbacks?
Florida State quarterbacks.
He is definitely top 5. I'm trying to see if I would even push him up higher. If you consider the body of work where he brought this team from, the delta from what this team looked like when he started versus when he's left it, I think that's unmitigated, the top one, if that's your main criteria. The other thing that's interesting, that as far as your ranking, like Jameis Winston, crazy stats. He's top 3 in pretty much everything, and he only did it in 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also kind of wild. Winky wins the Heisman, but he was one aspect quarterback he never could run. The other delta, maybe you could argue, was Charlie Ward, because he brought us the first natty. He's top 4 for sure. I'd have to do a little more research on that. That's a great question, Jerry.
Does he beat any of the Heisman? It's the real debate.
I don't know that we were playing to have him win the Heisman this year, just to be completely honest. We were setting him out of late games.
Does he beat one of the Heisman winners?
Oh.
Really?
If he were to beat a Heisman winner, it would maybe be Winky. Because Winky came in just, oh, by the way, we've been in the national championship every year for a better part of a decade, and you have all these great wide receivers. Have fun pitching the ball around. The groundwork is laid for you. Just come in and do what you've been doing in the minor leagues of baseball.
Yeah, and Winky's team was loaded. Like that whole roster, the offense and defense was.
Yeah, Snoop Minnis, Peter Warwick. Maybe also Travis Minor in the backfield, plus one of the best offensive lines. You wanted for nothing with those teams. That's a wonderful question, Jared. 3 or 4. I'll put him up there. Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Any final thoughts? I know we got a whole lot of other stuff to talk about too, but
we can probably go on. On.
I've exhausted my mailbag off the top of my head.
Yeah, I bet you could. And another point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the fans, thank you so much for listening. What we're gonna do is, in the next couple of days, we're gonna get you content because, Jared, the transfer portal is open. We've got chaos ensuing. We got a lot to cover with that. So, we're gonna make that its own episode this week. We're gonna wrap here, and then we'll release some content to you guys later this week. But Chris, can you remind the fans where they can give feedback on what they thought of what we talked about today?
Well, you just got to stroll on down to FloridaFocusPodcast.com.
Yes, indeed. Well, as always, Chris, Jared, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being good friends of mine and hearing me out. And I respect our differences, and that's what we'll always have with the show, I hope.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, this is Brandon signing off, saying go Noles.
This is Chris.
And Jared.
Go Gators.